I get asked all the time, if you're pulled over for a DWI, should you take the breath test or should you refuse the breath test? First question I'm going to ask you is, which breath test? Because really there's two, and you need to understand what those two breath tests are and what the consequences are of refusing each one. The first breath test that you may be offered is something called a portable breath test or a breath screening test, which is just a somewhat unreliable screening device that's used on the side of the road. Generally, this is not admissible to prove that you are guilty of DWI, but is rather used to establish probable cause to either arrest you or to take the stop further and perhaps do some standardized field sobriety tests. The consequences of refusing that is a traffic infraction which carries 2 points on your driver's license. Your license can't be suspended or revoked as a result of refusing that test. On the other hand, if you refuse a chemical test, the one back at the station house, either a blood test, a urine test, or a breathalyzer test, if you refuse one of those tests, then your license will be revoked for a period of 1 year, mandatory minimum, regardless of whether you are convicted of DWI. That is a very, very serious consequence. In addition, if you're found to have knowing all the consequences, refused the breath test, then that breath test can be used against you in any trial for DWI, meaning that the jury will hear that you were offered the opportunity after being arrested for DWI to take a breath test and that you refused to take that breath test. That evidence can be very dangerous, and a jury who's considering whether or not to convict you of driving while intoxicated will be able to infer, based upon the fact that you refused the test, that perhaps there was a reason why you refused the test. Generally, if it's a first arrest DWI, unless you are absolutely demolished, then we recommend that our clients take the breath test. The bottom line of it is, DWI is a misdemeanor. Many times it can be pled down to something even less than that, traffic infraction of driving while ability impaired by alcohol. On the other hand, if you refuse to take the breath test after you are given the proper warnings, then you will lose your license to operate a vehicle in the state of New York for a mandatory minimum of 1 year.